Welcome to today's deep dive, where we're going to be tackling a topic that's pretty close to home for a lot of you, I think.
Yeah.
That intricate dance of the parent-child relationship.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be going beyond the surface here to explore how our own childhood experiences can really shape the way we interact with our own kids.
Yeah, in ways that we don't even realize sometimes.
It's like our past is playing hide and seek in our present.
Totally.
So to help us uncover some of those hidden influences, we're turning to Philippa Perry's book.
Okay.
The book you wish your parents had read.
Love that title.
I know.
So good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, even just the title alone had me nodding along.
Right,
yes, there are definitely some things I wish my parents had read.
Absolutely.
Had known, at least.
I think that title really captures the essence of the book. It speaks to this universal desire for understanding, for smoother waters in both childhood and adulthood.
Yeah, what Perry does so brilliantly in this book is reveal how these unmet needs from our own past can, like, pop up unexpectedly when we become parents ourselves.
Right.
It's like we're...
Like our children become these little emotional archaeologists.
Oh, I like that.
Unearthing parts of us we thought we'd buried.
Okay, so let's dig into that a bit.
Yeah.
Perry introduces this concept of a parenting legacy.
Okay.
What exactly does she mean by that?
What she's essentially saying is that our upbringing creates a blueprint.
Okay.
A sort of template for how we approach parenthood.
Okay.
So we might unconsciously repeat patterns from our own childhood.
Got it.
Whether those patterns were helpful or harmful.
So even without realizing it, we could be passing down generational habits, both good and bad.
Exactly.
Okay, so to illustrate this point, Perry shares this story about a mother named Tay and her daughter, Emily.
Yeah.
Emily's playing on a climbing frame.
Okay.
Gets stuck and calls out for help.
Right.
Now, Tay is normally a very supportive mom, but all of a sudden she's hit with this overwhelming wave of anger, and she ends up yelling at Emily to get down herself, leaving Emily feeling confused and hurt.
Oh, that's tough.
Later, Tay realizes that her outburst wasn't really about Emily's actions at all. It was triggered by her own childhood experiences. Yeah. Okay, so there's a deeper layer here.
Yeah.
What was it about Tay's past that fueled this reaction?
So Tay's grandmother was incredibly overprotective.
Oh, yeah.
Treating her like a fragile porcelain doll.
Oh, gosh.
Constantly hovering and cautioning Tay against taking any risks.
You can almost picture her, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Be careful, darling.
Exactly. As a result, Tay grew up lacking confidence in her own abilities. She was always afraid of making mistakes and never felt truly independent.
Right.
So when Emily asked for help, it unconsciously transported Tay back to her childhood, triggering all those old feelings of inadequacy.
It's like she was seeing her own perceived helplessness reflected back at her in that moment.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow.
This is what we mean when we talk about the parenting legacy at play.
Right.
It's not just about the present situation.
Yeah.
It's about all the echoes of our past that are informing our reactions.
So in a way, our kids are holding up a mirror.
Oh, yeah.
Reflecting back parts of ourselves we may not even recognize.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
It's very powerful.
And it underscores the importance of understanding where our buttons are and why certain things push them so forcefully.
So becoming aware of these deep-seated patterns can be uncomfortable, to say the least.
Yeah.
It might involve revisiting some painful memories.
Sure.
Is it worth the discomfort?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It's like Perry says, if we want to raise our children differently than we were raised, we have to do the work of understanding how we were raised. That discomfort is a sign of growth.
So you're saying the journey to becoming more mindful parents starts with looking inward.
Yeah.
That's pretty profound.
It is.
I'm curious, how do we even begin to uncover these hidden triggers?
Well, one technique Perry suggests is to pause.
Okay.
When you feel that surge of anger or any intense emotion towards your child, don't react immediately.
Yeah.
Instead, ask yourself, does this feeling truly belong to this situation?
Okay.
Or is it an echo of something from my past?
It's about separating the present moment from the baggage we might be carrying.
Exactly. It allows us to respond thoughtfully.
Yeah.
Rather than simply reacting based on our own unresolved issues.
Okay, so we're starting to see how understanding our past is key to becoming more present and intentional parents.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, even with the best intentions, we're bound to mess up sometime.
Oh, absolutely. We're all human.
We're human.
And this brings us to another important concept from Perry's book, The idea of rupture and repair.
I've heard that phrase before, but to be honest,
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I understand it.
Okay.
Can you break that down for us a little bit?
Of course. So rupture refers to those inevitable moments of misunderstanding and hurt that occur in any close relationship, especially between parents and children.
Right.
Think arguments, disagreements, times when feelings get hurt.
Yeah.
It's the repair part that's truly magical.
So it's not about avoiding these conflicts altogether.
Right.
But rather about how we handle them.
Repair is about acknowledging our mistakes.
Okay.
Apologizing to our children, and actively working to change those knee-jerk reactions.
Okay.
Perry emphasizes that authenticity trumps a facade of perfection every time.
So it's better to be real with our kids even when we mess up?
Yes.
Than to pretend we have it all together.
Precisely. Our children need to see us as real people who make mistakes.
Yeah.
And learn from them. It gives them permission to be imperfect, too.
This takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
It does.
It means we don't have to strive for this unattainable ideal of the perfect parent.
Exactly. It frees us to be more present and connected with our children, embracing the ups and downs of this incredible journey.
Okay, so remember the story of Tay and Emily?
Yes.
Where Tay yelled at Emily on the climbing frame.
Right.
Well, later, Tay apologized to Emily, explaining that her anger was rooted in her own insecurities.
Right.
Not in anything Emily had done wrong. And Emily's response was so telling. She said, "Oh, I just thought you didn't care."
Wow.
That really highlights how deeply our reactions impact our kids.
Right.
And how much they crave that understanding and reassurance.
It's a beautiful example of how vulnerability and authenticity can actually strengthen the parent-child bond. It shows Emily that her feelings matter and that her mom cares even when she makes mistakes.
So by repairing that rupture, Tay was able to reassure Emily of her love. It wasn't just about fixing the situation.
Right.
It was about mending that connection.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And that's what rupture and repair is all about.
Yeah.
Acknowledging the misstep, owning it, and then rebuilding that trust and connection.
Right. And you know, sometimes those ruptures can lead to some pretty profound self-discoveries.
And it can.
Can you give us an example of how a challenging parenting situation could actually lead to personal growth?
Absolutely. Perry shares another story, this one about a father named Oscar.
Okay.
He felt this surge of rage when his young son dropped food on the floor.
Okay.
It was a completely disproportionate reaction, and it really confused him.
I think a lot of parents can relate to those moments where our reactions feel out of whack with the situation.
Oh, totally.
What was going on with Oscar?
Well, it turned out that Oscar's own father had been incredibly strict about table manners.
Oh, okay.
Punishing him harshly for any spills or messes.
Oh.
As a child, Oscar had internalized this message that making a mess was a terrible thing. And it created this deep-seated anxiety around food and meal times.
So he was carrying that emotional baggage from his childhood, and it resurfaced when his son dropped food?
Exactly.
Like his own past was being replayed in that moment.
You nailed it. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Oscar's story highlights that sometimes those intense emotional reactions are less about our children's behavior and more about the unresolved wounds we carry from our own past.
So what can we do in those situations?
Right.
How do we prevent our past from dictating our present parenting?
Well, for Oscar, the breakthrough came when he started unpacking those childhood experiences.
Okay.
He realized that his anger wasn't really directed at his son,
Yeah.
but at the echoes of his own past hurt.
Right.
And the fear of repeating his father's mistakes.
So by processing those old wounds, he was able to develop more compassion?
Yes.
For both his younger self and his son?
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the past without letting it control our present.
Yeah.
By unpacking those experiences and allowing ourselves to feel those old hurts, we can break the cycle of negative reactions. And that is where true healing begins.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
It's like we're not just raising our children, we're also reparenting ourselves along the way.
Beautifully put. It's a journey of self-discovery, and it's never too late to start.
Okay, so we've talked about the parenting legacy and how our past can influence our reactions, the importance of rupture and repair, and the power of unpacking our own childhood experiences.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process, but incredibly insightful.
It is.
I'm curious, are there any other stories from the book that stand out to you as particularly illuminating?
There is one, actually. It involves a father named Mark, who found himself struggling with feelings he didn't quite understand. He was feeling resentful towards his son, Toby, and these feelings brought up a lot of shame and confusion for Mark.
Wow.
He even started considering leaving his family.
Whoa, that sounds intense.
It was.
What was at the root of these feelings?
Well, Oscar Mark's past played a significant role. His own father had abandoned the family when Mark was young.
Wow.
Leaving him with a deep wound of desertion. And while Toby's needs were completely age-appropriate for Mark, they unknowingly triggered those old painful memories.
So it's like history was threatening to repeat itself.
Exactly. And it highlights a critical point Perry makes. Sometimes our negative feelings towards our children are actually masking deeper pain, often stemming from feeling unseen or unimportant as children ourselves.
That's a heavy realization.
It is.
Did Mark ever find a way to break free from those patterns?
He did. Through therapy, he began to confront his childhood grief and anger. And here's the amazing part. As he addressed his own past, he was able to connect with Toby on a deeper level. He saw Toby not as a burden, but as a little boy who simply needed his father's love and attention.
That's a beautiful example of how healing our own wounds can pave the way for healthier, more fulfilling relationships with our children.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that while parenting can unearth some uncomfortable truths, it can also be an incredible catalyst for personal growth and transformation.
It sounds like there's a lot more to unpack here.
There is.
This idea of desertion as a spectrum of behavior, the impact of our unmet needs, and how those needs can show up in our parenting. It's fascinating.
It is.
And I have to admit, a little daunting.
Sure.
But it feels incredibly important to understand.
Absolutely. And we're just getting started. You know what's fascinating about Perry's approach is she doesn't shy away from the messier, less glamorous aspects of parenting.
You mean like those days when you feel like you're running on fumes? Totally. Like patience is wearing thin?
Exactly. She acknowledges those feelings of frustration, resentment, even anger that most parents experience at some point. And instead of judging those emotions, she encourages us to embrace them.
Because let's face it, pretending we don't have those feelings, it's like trying to sweep dust under a rug. It's still there.
Totally.
It's just creating a bigger mess.
Precisely trying to maintain this facade of the perfect parent only sets us up for failure and disconnects us from our children.
It also makes it harder to reach out for support when we need it. It's like we're afraid to admit we're struggling because we think it means we're failing as parents.
That's so true. But acknowledging our struggles is actually a sign of strength. It shows that we're committed to doing the best we can for our children, even when it's tough. And it allows us to model healthy coping mechanisms for them.
So if we're trying to create a healthier parenting legacy, where do we even begin?
Well, the first step, as we've discussed, is self-awareness. Take the time to reflect on your own childhood experiences. What were the positive influences? What were the more challenging aspects? This isn't about dwelling on the past, but rather about understanding how it might be impacting your present.
So it's like those old choose-your-own-adventure books. We can't change the beginning of the story, but we have the power to choose a different path forward.
What a great analogy. It's about making conscious choices in our parenting. Rather than simply reacting based on ingrained patterns. We can choose to respond to our children from a place of love and understanding, even when they're pushing our buttons.
This all makes so much sense. But I think one of the biggest challenges for me is knowing how to validate my child's feelings, especially the ones that make me uncomfortable.
That's something Perry addresses directly. She emphasizes that all feelings are valid, even the ones that make us squirm. When we try to shut down our children's emotions, we're sending the message that those feelings are wrong or unacceptable.
That makes sense. So instead of saying, don't be sad or you shouldn't be angry, we should acknowledge those feelings. And create a space where they feel safe expressing their full range of emotions.
Exactly. And that can be as simple as saying, I see you're feeling frustrated right now, or it sounds like you're really disappointed.
So it's about meeting them where they are emotionally without trying to fix or dismiss their feelings.
Precisely. And remember, validating their feelings doesn't mean we have to agree with their behavior. We can say, I understand why you're angry, but hitting your brother is not okay.
That's a great example. It separates the feeling from the action.
Exactly. And it also models for them healthy ways to express and manage their emotions.
Mm.
Sometimes I think parents get confused between helping and rescuing.
Ooh, that's an interesting distinction. What do you mean by that?
It's so tempting to jump in and fix things for our kids,
Yeah.
especially when we see them struggling.
Right.
We want to shield them from disappointment and pain.
Of course.
But sometimes that rescue instinct can actually do more harm than good.
So we might be inadvertently preventing them from developing the resilience and problem-solving skills they need to navigate life's challenges.
You hit the nail on the head, and it can send the message that we don't believe they're capable of handling things on their own, instead of rescuing. Perry encourages us to offer support and guidance while giving our kids the space to make their own choices and learn from their mistakes.
So it's about finding that balance between offering support and allowing them to develop their own wings.
Exactly. And this might involve biting our tongues and resisting the urge to jump in with solutions.
Right.
Ask yourself, what would happen if I simply listened and offered encouragement instead of trying to fix this for them?
It's funny. Sometimes I think I'm doing my kids a favor by rescuing them.
Right.
But maybe I'm actually robbing them of valuable learning opportunities.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
What a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's about empowering our children to become independent thinkers and problem solvers.
Speaking of empowerment, I've always struggled with setting boundaries.
Okay.
I want my kids to like me.
Right.
And I worry that boundaries will make them angry or resentful.
I think a lot of parents struggle with this.
Yeah.
But Perry makes a compelling case for why boundaries are essential for healthy relationships.
So it's not about being controlling or punitive.
Right.
But about creating a safe and respectful environment for everyone.
Exactly. Boundaries help define roles and responsibilities, creating structure and predictability, which can actually reduce anxiety for children.
So how do we set boundaries effectively, especially with strong-willed kids?
Perry suggests being clear, consistent, and enforcing those boundaries with love and compassion. Instead of using you statements like, you need to clean your room. Try statements like, I'd appreciate it if you could tidy up your room before dinner.
That subtle shift in language feels less accusatory and more collaborative.
Exactly. And whenever possible, involve children in the process of setting those boundaries. For example, if you're trying to limit screen time, work together to create a schedule that feels fair to everyone.
That makes a lot of sense. It gives them a sense of ownership and agency.
And remember, boundaries should be flexible and adaptable as children grow and change. What might be appropriate for a toddler won't necessarily work for a teenager.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between providing structure and allowing for their growing independence.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned the desertion spectrum earlier. I think it's worth circling back to that concept because it's so central to understanding how our own childhood experiences can shape our parenting.
Let's dive back into that. I'm still processing this idea that desertion isn't just about physical abandonment.
Right. It goes much deeper than that. Think of it as a spectrum. With physical abandonment on one end and more subtle forms of emotional withdrawal on the other.
So even if we're physically present, we can still emotionally desert our children by being emotionally unavailable, dismissing their needs, or making them feel unseen and unheard.
And those subtle forms of emotional desertion can be just as damaging to a child's sense of self-worth and their ability to form healthy relationships.
That's a powerful realization, and it really highlights the importance of being present and engaged with our children, even when we're tired or stressed.
It's about making that conscious effort to connect, to listen, and to let them know that we see them and value their presence in our lives.
So we've talked about acknowledging those messy feelings that come with parenting, the power of validating our children's emotions, finding the balance between helping and rescuing, setting healthy boundaries, and revisiting this idea of the desertion spectrum. I'm feeling like a sponge soaking up all this information.
Good.
What else can we glean from Perry's wisdom?
There's so much good stuff in this book, but I think one of the most powerful takeaways is the emphasis on the importance of play.
You mean like actually getting down on the floor and playing with your kids?
Exactly. But Perry goes beyond simply advocating for playtime.
Okay.
She sees play as a crucial element in a child's development.
So it's not just about having fun.
Right.
It's about learning and growing.
You got it.
Yeah.
Play allows children to explore their creativity,
Mm-hmm.
problem-solving skills, and social interactions.
Yeah.
It's a way for them to make sense of the world around them and develop essential life skills.
Yeah. And I bet it's an amazing way to connect with our kids on their level.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
When we engage in play with our children, we're entering their world. We're showing them that we value their interests and that we're willing to be silly and have fun with them.
And I bet those moments create some of the most cherished memories of childhood.
They do.
I know some of my favorite memories are of just goofing off with my parents.
Me too.
Yeah.
And just as important as playing together is giving our children space to be themselves.
You mean letting go of our expectations and allowing them to discover their own unique passions and talents?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can be challenging in a culture that often pressures us to mold our children into certain ideals.
Right.
But as Perry points out, every child is different, and they each have their own path to follow.
So instead of trying to steer them in a particular direction, we should be their cheerleaders, supporting them as they explore their own interests.
Precisely. Our role as parents is to support their journey, not to dictate it. And that requires a lot of trust in their abilities and a willingness to celebrate their individuality.
It's about nurturing their unique spark rather than trying to fit them into a predetermined mold.
You said it perfectly. And, part of supporting their journey involves having some tough conversations.
Okay.
Even when they feel awkward or uncomfortable.
What kind of conversations are we talking about here?
Well, Perry emphasizes the importance of teaching our children about consent.
Okay.
This is crucial for fostering a culture of respect and safety.
Right.
And it's something we need to start talking about from a young age.
So we're talking about respecting their right to say no to physical touch?
Yes.
Even from family members.
Exactly.
And teaching them to ask for consent before touching others.
And as they get older, those conversations can expand to include discussions about healthy relationships, communication, compromise, and conflict resolution.
It's about equipping them with the tools they need
to
navigate the complexities of human relationships.
And it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
Our children are always watching us.
They are.
So if we're constantly arguing or disrespecting each other, they're going to pick up on those patterns.
So it's about modeling healthy relationship behaviors for them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Show them how to communicate, effectively resolve conflicts peacefully, and treat each other with kindness and respect.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
What's the key takeaway from all of this? What's the one thing you hope listeners will remember from our deep dive into Philippa Perry's book?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that parenting is not about perfection.
Okay.
It's about being present, being intentional, and being willing to do the work.
It's about understanding that we're all on a journey of continuous learning and growth, both as individuals and as parents.
You said it.
Yeah.
And it's about remembering that we're not alone in this.
Right.
We all have our challenges, our doubts, and our moments of feeling completely overwhelmed.
But by approaching parenting with humility, compassion, and a willingness to learn from our mistakes, we can create a more loving and fulfilling experience for both ourselves and our children.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up our deep dive,
I
keep coming back to this idea that parenting is a journey, not a destination.
It's about embracing the messiness, the challenges and the triumphs, knowing that we're all doing the best we can with the knowledge and resources we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if we can approach this journey with a sense of curiosity, a willingness to learn, and a commitment to breaking free from those harmful patterns from our past, we can create a legacy of love and connection that will ripple through generations to come.
That's a powerful image and a beautiful note to end on.
It is.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
But this feels like just the beginning of the conversation.
It is, and we encourage all of you listening to continue exploring these concepts and reflecting on what they mean for your own families.
Pick up a copy of the book you wish your parents had read.
Yes.
I have a feeling it will spark some insightful conversations.
I think so.
And maybe even inspire some positive changes in your own parenting journey.
It's like Perry's giving us permission to be human,
Yeah.
To acknowledge that parenting isn't always sunshine and rainbows.
And that it's okay to ask for help when we need it.
Absolutely.
In fact, seeking support is essential.
It is.
For our own well-being and ultimately for the well-being of our children.
Right.
We can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Exactly. And speaking of filling our cups, one thing that really resonated with me in Perry's book was her emphasis on the importance of play.
I love that she brings this up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like play gets pushed aside in the busyness of life.
It does.
But you're saying she sees it as more than just a fun activity for kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. She views play as essential for a child's development, a vital ingredient in their emotional, social, and cognitive growth.
So it's not just about keeping them entertained.
Right.
It's about fostering those essential skills
Yes.
we'll need to thrive in the world.
Precisely through play.
Right.
Children can explore their creativity, develop problem-solving skills, and learn to navigate social interactions.
Right.
It's like a laboratory for life.
Oh, I like that.
A safe space to experiment, take risks,
and
learn from their mistakes.
I remember spending hours building forts and creating elaborate imaginary worlds with my siblings. Those were some of my happiest childhood memories.
And those memories are more than just nostalgia. They represent essential learning experiences. Moments where you were honing those crucial life skills without even realizing it.
It's like play is their language, their way of processing the world around them.
Exactly. And when we as parents engage in play with our children, we're speaking their language. We're showing them that we value their world, their interests. And that we're willing to let go of our grown-up seriousness and just be silly with them.
That shift in perspective is so important, isn't it?
It is.
It's about meeting them where they are. Rather than expecting them to always conform to our adult ways of being.
Absolutely. And speaking of meeting them where they are, Perry also encourages us to give our children the space to be themselves, to discover their own unique passions and talents.
This can be tough, can't it?
It can.
Especially in a culture that often pressures us to mold our children into certain ideals.
Totally.
But you're saying we need to let go of those expectations and allow them to forge their own path.
Exactly. Every child is unique with their own set of strengths, interests, and dreams. Our role is not to dictate their path, but to support them as they explore their own potential.
It's like we're gardeners, providing the nurturing environment for them to blossom, but trusting that they will ultimately grow in their own unique way.
What a beautiful analogy. And, you know, part of nurturing that growth involves having some tough conversations, even when they feel uncomfortable.
You mentioned earlier the importance of talking to our children about consent.
Right.
What other topics might fall under this umbrella of tough but necessary conversations?
Well, as our children grow, those conversations can expand to include topics like healthy relationships, communication boundaries, and even sexuality.
These can be challenging conversations to navigate.
They can.
Especially in a culture that often shies away from these topics.
Absolutely. But it's crucial that we provide our children with accurate information and a safe space to ask questions and explore these important aspects of life.
I think sometimes parents avoid these conversations because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. Or maybe they worry about introducing concepts too early. Any advice for parents who are feeling hesitant?
It's understandable to feel a bit apprehensive. But remember, it's not about having all the answers. It's about being open and honest, listening to their questions and guiding them with age-appropriate information.
And we can always seek out resources to help us navigate these conversations.
Absolutely.
There are so many books, websites, and organizations that offer valuable guidance for parents.
Exactly. And, you know, while we're talking about the importance of open communication, I think it's worth circling back to something we touched on earlier. The power of modeling healthy relationship behaviors for our children.
You mean practicing what we preach, so to speak?
Precisely. Our children are constantly observing how we interact with each other, with other family members, and with the world around us. They're little sponges soaking up our words, our actions, and even our unspoken attitudes.
So if we're constantly arguing, disrespecting each other, or handling conflicts poorly, they're likely to internalize those patterns.
Exactly. But on the flip side, if we show them how to communicate, effectively resolve conflicts peacefully, and treat each other with kindness and respect, those positive patterns will become ingrained as well.
It's like we're creating a blueprint for healthy relationships. Not just within our own family, but in all areas of their lives.
That's a great way to put it. We're not just raising children. We're shaping the future of how they relate to themselves, to others, and to the world around them.
Wow. That's a powerful reminder of the impact we have as parents.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the core message of Philippa Perry's book.
Okay.
That by understanding ourselves, by healing our own wounds, and by making conscious choices in our parenting, we have the power to break those cycles of dysfunction.
Right.
And create a legacy of love, connection, and emotional well-being.
That's a beautiful message to end on.
It is.
And, as we wrap up our deep dive into the book you wish your parents had read, I'm struck by the realization that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
There's so much more to explore, to reflect on, and to apply in our own lives.
And we encourage you to continue this journey of exploration.
Yeah.
Pick up a copy of the book, revisit the concepts we've discussed,
right,
and keep those conversations going with your partner, your friends, and your children.
Because ultimately, parenting is not about striving for perfection.
No, it's not.
It's about showing up with love, with compassion.
Yes.
And with a willingness to learn and grow alongside our children.
Beautifully said. And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thank you.
We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit empowering.
Until next time, happy parenting.